This is 2023's Which Brings Me to You. Warning, spoilers ahead. Will arrives late to his friend's wedding, unintentionally drawing the attention of Jane. Later, they cross paths at the bar, strike up a conversation, and eventually decide to go for a walk. As they open up to each other during their stroll, they stumble upon a dead cat. While standing near the lifeless animal, Jane unexpectedly reveals that when she first saw him, she imagined having sex with Will in the coat closet. Yes, this is definitely not your typical how we met story. To their surprise, the cat revives, and the pair decides to make love. However, things come to a halt when Will says he just wants to get to know her better. Jane, visibly upset, leaves. Will, determined not to let things end there, manages to track her down in the middle of nowhere. He offers her a ride, and Jane agrees. Sitting in the car, Will tries to steer the conversation toward their lives, mentioning that he works as a commercial photographer while Jane is a freelance writer. But Jane quickly shuts that down. She's clearly not in the mood for small talk. Still, Will piques her interest by sharing the story of his high school girlfriend, recounting their romantic nights in his car and how she inspired his love for photography. Unfortunately, their story ended in heartbreak when he returned home from his first semester of college only to find her with another guy. Ouch, Will. That one stings. The two arrive at a diner, and over some pie, Jane finally opens up. She shares a story about her first boyfriend, Michael, who drove a red Mustang. One day, Jane realized she didn't know much about him. When she showed up at his house, Michael's mother revealed that his father had died, something Jane had no idea about. Their relationship fell apart not long after. Honestly, what is it with heartbreak and muscle cars? Should they come with a warning label? Back at the diner, Will gets a spontaneous idea and takes Jane drifting in the car. Afterward, they drive to a closed amusement park. When they climb to the highest point of a ride and almost share a kiss, they're interrupted by security and have to retreat to the car. On the way back, Will remarks that they probably won't see each other again, so why not share their most humiliating relationship stories? He starts by telling her about Eve, a woman he met during college who was visiting her cousin. Eve asked Will to walk her to the train station, but they ended up spending time in his room instead. They blossomed into a deeper connection, and Eve invited Will to visit her in New York City. He agreed, and they began a whirlwind romance, with Will occasionally taking the train back to college to write exams. But eventually, Will had to choose between staying with Eve, who deeply loved him, and finishing college. He chose the latter and left without saying goodbye. They never spoke again. Harsh, Will! An Irish goodbye might work at a party, but not for a relationship. Back to the present, Will and Jane are strolling by the sea, and it's Jane's turn to share a story. She begins to talk about another boyfriend, but abruptly stops, saying she has to leave. Jane expresses that meeting Will has been wonderful, takes his number, and departs. Later, Will returns to the wedding party. At the bar, he's approached by an attractive woman who knows all about his recent adventures and offers to get him a drink. Will politely declines and instead walks out to stare at the sea, lost in thought while listening to music. Just then, Jane calls and starts sharing her story. She recounts meeting a guy, Elto, during her senior year at college at a bar. Wanting to find someone interesting, she went out with him and had fun. Later, the guy turned up at her class and took her out again to spend time together. That evening, as Jane was heading back to her dorm, the guy, to impress her, decided to climb to the top of a building. But she said it didn't leave an indelible impression on her. Honestly, who thinks this is a good idea? Nothing screams potential boyfriend material like scaling a roof in a fit of heartbreak and desperation. Someone get this guy a therapist. In the morning, they meet. Elton starts sharing his plan to spend the summer in Paris, but Jane says she wants to take care of the boy and doesn't want to rush into anything. However, Elton keeps going on about Paris, completely ignoring her point, and that marks the end of any romantic tension between them. Back to our beloved couple, Will finds Jane on the beach and begins talking about his parents' divorce, which was caused by his mother's mental illness. Jane, in turn, shares a similar experience about her own parents' divorce. Well, at least they're bonding over shared trauma. Nothing brings two people closer together than emotionally scarring childhood experiences. Jane then says she's starving, so they set off to find food. They stumble upon a party. It turns out to be the 40th anniversary celebration of an old couple. Introducing themselves as party crashers, they take the elderly couple to the dance floor. After the dance, Will finds Jane and they have a splendid romantic time together. The evening goes so well that they decide to head to a motel. However, just before they leave, Jane asks Will if he has a girlfriend. He answers no and launches into a story about the deluge of girlfriends he's had over the past 2 years, admitting that none of them lasted because they were essentially all the same. When your flirting skills include a confession of being a serial dater, you're either wildly confident or really bad at this game. As they get into the car, Jane shocks Will by revealing she was almost married once. She recounts going on a blind date with a lawyer named Mark, which escalated quickly to meeting his parents and his brother Todd. During the visit, they have a normal conversation about work, but Mark suddenly announces that they're engaged. Jane explains this happened 3 months ago, and the engagement lasted a mere 13 days. She admits she just wanted to leave her unstable life behind and start fresh, like beginning with a blank canvas. One day, when Mark wasn't home, Todd visits Jane and confesses that he has a crush on her and can't stop thinking about her. He even claims that Mark is boring and that she doesn't love him. But when Todd crosses a line, Jane asks him to leave. Plot twist! Todd was either the boldest brother ever or just had no idea how to read a room. Later, Jane meets Mark at a restaurant and reveals that she slept with Todd. Unsurprisingly, Mark storms out. Back to the present, Will and Jane arrive at the motel and immediately start venting all the emotions they've been accumulating throughout the day. But suddenly, Jane stops abruptly and says she wants to talk about one more past relationship. She begins telling Will about Wallace Fielding. She met him while finishing her master's degree. Wallace, a professor whose book Jane had read, invited her to his cozy house after a stroll. Despite his claim of having no time for new experiences, Jane gently hints otherwise, and soon they move to the bedroom. Later, Wallace suggests that Jane move in with him. She is shocked but agrees. You have to admire Jane's subtlety, turning book discussions into bedroom invitations. Classic academic romance. One evening, they planned to attend a party together, but Wallace refused going, saying Jane needed to relax alone. When Jane returned home later that evening, she found Wallace passed out on the couch surrounded by empty bottles of alcohol. The next morning, Wallace surprised her with a frivolous idea to get married, but Jane said they didn't need to rush. The following morning, she left him without a word, Irish goodbye, and never saw him again because he passed away shortly afterward. This was before Mark, and Jane still blames herself for the professor's death. Nothing says romantic baggage like an ex who might have died of heartbreak or bad decisions. Poor Wallace. To cheer Jane up, Will begins a story about Audrey. He was hired to take photos of a band, and Audrey, the lead singer, soon became his girlfriend. They moved in together, but the story doesn't go much further. Back to the present, Will and Jane are at the motel, where they realize they found something special in each other. However, when Will goes to the bathroom, Jane finds a postcard to some Juliet saying, "I love you." When Will returns and sees her with it, he explains that this is the rest of the story about Audrey. He reveals that they eventually broke up, but on the day she moved out, Audrey dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant. Why do people in movies always find dramatic postcards or letters at the worst moments? It's like the universe insists on perfect timing for chaos. Back to Will and Jane, he explains that Juliet is his daughter and she's turning 5 next week. Furious that he hadn't revealed this earlier, Jane gets dressed and tells him their relationship will never work before storming out. Later, they're both watching the sunrise, but in different places. Will calls Audrey to speak to Juliet. During their conversation, Juliet mentions her painting-themed birthday party where they're planning to paint a turtle. Audrey cuts the call short to take Juliet to breakfast, and Will tearfully tells his daughter how much he loves her before hanging up and going for a swim. The turtle painting party sounds pretty adorable. Too bad Will's emotional meltdown is happening alongside it. Meanwhile, Jane is in a taxi but suddenly asks the driver to pull over when she spots Will's car. She asks the driver to follow him. Will arrives at the beach, waiting for Jane, who soon shows up. He confesses his deep love for his daughter, despite seeing her rarely, and his feelings for Jane. Jane says she'd love to meet Juliet and admits she feels they can make things work. The movie ends with a promising kiss. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.